This is the Gutsiest Brands podcast, a show dedicated to truly understanding how bold, empathic, pioneering, and impactful brands find their way in a hyper-competitive world. Welcome to the very first episode of the Gutsiest Brands podcast. Our show is built around understanding the DNA of a gutsy brand by talking to the world's most innovative brand leaders. Every episode will speak to a leader from a brand we believe is gutsy. Now, what does that mean? Here at GutCheck, we believe there are 4 primary criteria that help us evaluate if a brand is gutsy. First, empathy, putting themselves firmly in the shoes of other people. Companies that lead with empathy go the extra mile and have the courage to look deep inside. They innovate to create hyper-relevant products, services, and initiatives that connect a deeper, more human dimension, recognizing real people with real emotions going through real experiences. Pioneering brands refuse to be limited by what is. They identify new problems to be solved or take industries in an entirely new direction. Bold. Companies that stand behind bold ideas may make decisions that aren't always popular, but are distinctive and may lead to bigger wins. They step outside of their comfort zone to be meaningful, connect in new and exciting ways, and really stand out from the crowd. Seeing opportunity where others see trade-off. Where others are making trade-offs and compromising, gutsy brands see opportunities to outperform. They overcome perceived barriers to deliver true innovation. I'm your host, Emily Eichelberger, and we have a very special guest for our very first episode. Today, our GutCheck CEO and fearless leader, Rob Wengel, sits down to chat with Craig Dubitsky. Craig is the Chief Innovation Strategist at Colgate-Palmolive, a leading global consumer product company. The founder of Hello Products, an oral care company on a mission to make the world a friendly place, a co-founder and creative lead at EOS Products, and an early investor in Method Products. Rob's on a mission to find out what makes Craig tick, get the insider scoop on what makes him so successful in innovation, find out what he thinks being gutsy means, and what brands embody gutsiness. So join me and listen in to one of the friendliest guys out there spill his guts. And while you do, I have a challenge for you. Try to determine what makes Craig and the brands he works with gutsy. And let's also try to find out when exactly Craig sleeps.
Welcome, Craig. So we believe really strongly that brand building and innovation kind of lives in a world of a little bit too much Me Tooism, and that to really succeed in this crazy market that we live in, you really have to break through. So this podcast and talking to you, Craig, is all about what it takes to break through, and we believe strongly that it takes guts to break through.
What a good tie back to GutCheck. I see what you did there.
You're quick. That's why we like you. Your creativity. We're going to go through a few chapters today. We're going to talk. We want to talk a lot about your journey. You've had multiple brands that have been extremely successful. You've been a serial entrepreneur, and we want to talk about that. We want to see what lessons that we really can derive and share with our listeners from that. Then we want to take you outside of your own brands a little bit to kind of get some perspective and observations about other people and other brands. And there might be a lightning round or two that we introduce in the middle of the game show. How's that?
Sounds great. Great.
So you have had a variety of successes, and a lot of serial entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs, but not necessarily serially successful. So let's start with your first one. Tell me about your first startup, your first new brand you brought to the world.
my very first one was, I'm laughing because I don't know if this is the answer you're expecting, but my very first one was my car wash / lemonade stand when I was a kid. That was my very, very first one. And I was probably 8 years old or something. And I had seen other kids with lemonade stands. I thought that was pretty cool. But I couldn't just have a lemonade stand because other kids had lemonade stands. And why was mine going to be any different? So my lemonade stand was also a car wash. And I employed all these kids in my neighborhood to help wash the cars while I, sat back and tried to upsell and cross-sell the various services and or lemonade, or do like gift with purchase of lemonade while you waited to get your car washed, because there was obviously a lot more money to be had by washing people's cars than serving up a plastic cup filled with whatever was the country time lemonade, instant lemonade mix of the day.
Was that business branded?
No, I don't think I knew the power at the time of names and naming and brand identity like I do now. I know much more now than I did then. But I knew about margin.
Margin when it's a lemonade stand is, do you count the cost of goods sold that your parents actually contributed or not?
Well, clearly I looked at that as a write-off for them. So I didn't really, count that in quite the same way. My accounting skills were not quite as refined as they should have been for an 8-year-old. But
so let's talk about methods. Let's talk about
methods. Yes.
Where did it come from?
So first of all, I have to throw a caveat in, because you said I've been an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, serial with an S, by the way. I've been around a lot of different entrepreneurs as well. So I just want to be clear. Like I never want to take credit. I don't like to take credit for anything, frankly. I think if credit's given, that's, I guess, okay, and sometimes a little awkward, at least for me. But I would say in terms of method, I just want to be clear. Here's the method story. I was lucky enough to meet the founders of Method literally when they were 2 guys mixing product in their bathroom. So I was out in California at the time. I had a startup that had taken me to California, having nothing to do with CPG. It was a concept I had to reinvent, relocation, basically moving services. And I had raised a bunch of money. I had put together an amazing team. The company was acquired before we ever launched by a big public, REIT. And I was out in San Francisco. My old CFO said, I met this guy. He likes all the same stuff you do, which at the time, and still to this day, is design and brand and design and brand and design and brand and packaging. And I've always had a thing for packaging, and I've always had a thing for everyday things. I like, who doesn't like, really exotic looking design? It's terrific. It's inspirational. But for me, I think everything's art, and I like really everyday things, like really, really everyday things. I'm looking at my desk now, just to give you an example of like something on my desk I think is really cool. A really old pencil sharpener. Like, it's really cool. It's really old. Like, I grew up with these types of things. So
Andy Warhol likes some everyday things too.
It worked out for him. So, I mean, generally speaking. So Eric Ryan was the first person I met, who's, Eric and Adam Lowry are the 2 co-founders of Method. I really love packaging. A mutual person, my old CFO at my moving relocation startup, was doing some consulting work at an agency where Eric was working. And literally, this guy says to me, this guy likes all the same stuff you do. You guys have to meet, which, by the way, is like the story of my life. Someone just says, you 2 have to meet. And so take every meeting. That's my principle of life. Anyway, I met with Eric, and we had this crazy bonding session because we were, chit-chatting, and I really liked packaging, and he really liked packaging, which is not a normal topic of discourse, really. I think I asked him, well, what's your favorite pack? And he's like, oh, it's not an American company. You're probably not going to know it. And I said, oh, same with me. Mine's, I have a favorite thing, and it's not for America either. And we kept sort of like trading back and forth, this weird ping pong. And eventually we realized that we had the identical psychotic obsession with this package, that like you couldn't fake this. Like, even if you were trying, you had some motive, like there was no way you could fake doing this thing. I'll tell you what it is, just because it's funny. It was a brand called Physio Sport. It was a Unilever product, and it kind of predated Lynx. Lynx is Axe outside of the US, at least in the UK. And we both had this pack. Like, you couldn't fake having this thing.
You both swiped in the right direction on that favorite.
Totally, 100%. I was like, oh my God, like, do you have the seafoam green one with the Olympic rings on it? He was like, holy shit, like, yeah, like, oh my God, like you really do know it. I'm like, yes, I really do know it. So I said, I heard you have some idea that's keeping you up at night. What is it? He said, and I quote, I think cleaning products suck. That's what he said, which is very eloquent and very direct. And I went, well, why do you say that? I never really at the time had thought much about household cleaning products. And he said, well, as a consumer, the biggest thing you buy is your home. And the stuff you use to take care of it is so ugly, you have to hide it. And so toxic, you have to lock it up. And I was like, ding, 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 like every synapse fired for me. And I said, oh, like I was blown away by this seemingly very simple insight. You got to go back in time. This is like 1999. And I went to him, now that you say this, and my mind is totally blown, to use the parlance of the day, I said, yeah, I think cleaning products suck because the brands were basically all created at a time when women deep clean the house every day, and they watched daytime programming, which was called soap operas because a big soap company basically paid for the production. They pined over the fact that they hadn't married an astronaut, or they weren't, Jackie O. They were just at home smoking cigarettes and deep clean the house every day. And last I checked, that wasn't the world that I occupied, and I didn't know any women that were waiting around for their husbands to come home from work, with the hot meal on the table and the sports page by the front door, you know, all that kind of nonsense. The brands to me were really, really antiquated. So I made fun of them to Eric. I was like, they all have X's: Windex, Ajax, Borax, Oxidol. Comet was like a breakout brand because it took into account that the space race was going on at the time. And then Mr. Clean, who was, to me, patterned after Yul Brynner, who was as Yul Brynner from the King and I times, was sort of the first permissible sex symbol for women in America. Because American men, were like, oh, he's bald, has a funny accent, I don't have to worry about him. Well, basically that became Mr. Clean, this, bald-headed dude with an earring and a tight white t-shirt. So I say all this stuff to Eric. He's like, wow. And anyway, we had this bond, and he had this idea, and I really got behind it. So I led the original investment of Method in my role, which had nothing to do with CPG or investing like that, because I really believed, and I convinced people that it was going to be a big thing. And I'll never forget the people I worked with were like, I'll give you the G-rated version. We know you don't want bad things to happen to us. So, okay, you can, make this investment. So I invested personally a little bit. I invested on behalf of the company that I worked for, which had nothing to do with CPG. And Method became this white paper study, it basically how to build a very modern brand when there was no D2C, there was no social, there was nothing like that. So yeah, Method was really interesting. And I think the thing for me was certainly the concept, before I even saw any pictures, just this idea that the story, the narrative in cleaning was ridiculous to me. And it, again, had missed all the cultural nuance of these bigger shifts that were happening, that, oh yeah, women had careers. They weren't just homemakers, right? Which is like such a wild term and such an antiquated term.
So you said brand design. That's the key. But what I also just heard you say was
people.
Talk about that. So some of the company you work for now, there are people at the company you work for now who have actually spoken to me in the past about what you just called everyday products, but they would often refer to as low involvement and low interest categories.
Yeah, I hate that language. So I hear that like I'm getting like cringy hearing that. And because my thesis is very simple, and thesis is a very an aggrandizing term for what it really is. My gut, to use a word.
Use it often.
Is that there's no such thing. Yes, I use it often. Yes. And think of you always and think of you fondly each time. I will basically just put it out there that I don't think there is such a thing as a low interest, low involvement category. I think there are low interest, low involvement brands. And I think people care about everything. I don't think there's such a thing as a boring category at all, like zero. And anyone who says that, I'm like, that's because you must have a boring outlook or a boring product or a boring proposition or a boring brand or a boring way of telling your story. Because people care about everything. They care about buttons on their shirts. They care about doorknobs. They care about which type of windshield wiper gets installed in their car. They care about everything. They care about the height of the heel of the shoe that they're wearing. And they may not come out and tell you directly. That's the tricky part. That's where you have to really be a student of people. That's why I love people, because if you can try your best to figure out people, then you're in a great place. And I'll share another, because you made me think about what was your first thing, and I talked about having a car wash / lemonade stand. But a really, really early thing for me, I call it cultural currency. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if I need to trademark that at some point. I don't know if it's already taken.
I think it's taken. We Googled it while you were talking. It's taken.
Okay, good. So so I learned something really interesting about people when I was very young. I was a quirky kid, like any probably quirky kid. I don't want to say I was more quirky than anybody else, but I was quirky. I remember getting an album from my father, who was in the textile world. He was in the textile business basically forever. And his fabrics adorned the album cover of this band called the Bay City Rollers, which I only expect some people who may or may not be listening to know.
I might remember them.
You would know the Bay City Rollers, right? So the Bay City Rollers. So my father's fabrics adorned the cover of the Bay City Rollers album. So he came home with a test pressing of this album before there was an album cover, and I'm in second grade. And I play this album and I hear this song called Saturday Night, Saturday Night. Big hit, big global hit. They were like a very popular boy band, for those of you who don't know. Scottish, they wore kilts, it was madness. Like Bay City Rollers had very rabid fans. I heard this thing before anyone that I knew heard it. Certainly was not on the radio at all. And I heard the song and it blew my mind. And I went to every person I knew or wanted to know and try to like fit in or, be cool or have some type of, second grade swagger. And I would talk about the song and I would do anything I could to play it. It wasn't like you could share it with somebody back then. It was on a physical LP, a piece of vinyl. So anyone I could talk to about it, I would talk about it and say, you wait till you hear the song. It's the greatest thing ever. And however many months later, the song became this huge hit. It was like, you could not hear the song. There was like no one who didn't know the song. And I got all this credit. I got all this sort of psychic credit. I got this cultural currency. Basically, people were like, this guy played that song for me or talked about that song 2 months ago, 6 months ago.
You were ahead of the curve.
And I learned in second grade the power of if you can figure out something that people are going to like or hopefully love before they know about it, there's incredible power that comes with that. And I don't mean in the Spider-Man sense, it comes with great responsibility. I mean, it's real, and maybe there is some great responsibility, but it's really about appreciating the gaps in people's lives, what genuinely can make them happy, and figuring out how to deliver against that in a way that I hate to even use terms like this, but that'll like surprise and delight, right? Something that'll blow somebody's mind in a positive way. And if you can figure that out, you're gold. Doesn't matter what industry you're in.
So you're a student of culture. You're a student of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've got really good intuition, but intuition, I think, is probably built on observation, study,
Totally,
and listening. Is there an example of a place where you actually learned something from people that really surprised you? Are there any brands where you thought you were going down one path, but you learned something that took you down a different path?
I remember something that I experienced early and that the company Method experienced early that I found really fascinating. So Method came out with some dish soaps, and the dish soaps dispensed from the bottom, they were inverted, which that alone, talk about like turning a category on its head, like literally and figuratively. And they leaked, like the first versions leaked. And I remember at the time, I'll never forget this number, Target had 1,208 stores at this time. And I remember that number so well because people had to be sent into the stores to basically plug the product that was on the shelf so it wouldn't leak and like put these stickers on the bottom. And it was a nightmare. So we had to send people into the back rooms at Target to take stock out and fix this thing and then come up with a workaround going forward. But the thing that I remember that really blew my mind was that normally you'd think, oh no, like we have a faulty product, something's not right. It's like it's over, right? We have this big problem. And what I realized with the case here with Method, with this leaky bottle at the time, was that the company had established this incredible goodwill and rapport with people. And also with Target. Like Target didn't say, you're out of here, there's a problem. Like they really built this interesting relationship and set of relationships across the board, not with a retail partner at the time, yes, absolutely. But with the people that were using the product, it's like they had earned this permission from the people that were using Method that it was okay to make a mistake. And that was really, really valuable for me. That informed a lot of stuff for me down the line. And I haven't really thought about that.
How do you think they earned that trust?
I think by being authentic and really trying to do something different that was genuine and that wasn't, there was no pretense about it really. And I remember another story, another startup that I was involved with a long time ago. They were launching in Target. I'd introduced this brand to Target. I'll be kind and I won't mention the brand. And, they were entrepreneurs and they were creatives and they weren't necessarily the most business minded, but lovely, talented people nonetheless. And they realized after the doors were open to Target that they had completely screwed up on all their costs. Like they really messed up. And they were prepared with this huge dossier to go back to the buyer and basically go through this wild scenario where they were going to basically like retrade on everything and say, like we have to change the pricing. There's, the cost of oil went up and gasoline went up and all the shipping, logistics costs went up and all this stuff. And they had like built this crazy case and they were going to go back and I literally said, I don't think you should do that. And they were like, but we have to raise the price. And I said, why don't you go back and basically say, listen, really sorry, we really messed up. And just say you really messed up and say, this is what it needs to be. And just apologize and explain how maybe you missed it and why, and just apologize. And that was my advice to them. And they came back, I wasn't in this meeting, but they came back or they called me after and they said, thank God we had this chat. And I said, well, what happened? What happened? And they said, we went in, with this whole story. After talking to you, we just went in with the mea culpa and like, we screwed up. And the buyer had like multiple analysts with him. And the buyer, they told me the story. They said, the buyer said, I'm so glad you said that, because if you had come back and said oil prices went up, I have like a 80-page document over here with this analyst that would basically negate everything you were saying. And if you said, raw material costs went up for you, or, some consolidator, co-pack or whatever costs, I had a whole nother report in this guy's hand that was going to refute everything you said. But he's like, but I don't have anything for we blanked up, like I don't have anything for that. So, okay. So I've learned along the way, like, it's trite, which is a horrible word, but it's just true. Honesty is the best policy. If you screw up, say you screwed up. Like, how is someone gonna beat you up about that, right? If you really own it and you're legit. And I find that most humans, not consumers, humans, have a level of acceptance, because who hasn't screwed up, right? Like, how much more in common could you have with a brand than talking to the people that have said, like, we're here to make it better, we really mean it, here's what we're doing, here are changes we've made. Like, I think people understand that. That's a much more realistic and authentic connection than we're not talking to you. Here's a letter from the law firm that represents, us, or the accounting firm, or whatever. That's cold. We have enough chill in our life as it is. So anyway, if there's a way to break down the walls, that's what you do.
So authenticity is a very consistent
Yes.
thing.
People have a bullshit meter.
So when you launched Hello, was one of the things that I always admired was the easy access to the friendly founder, the easy access to the CEO, be it on a phone call, Skype. You publicized it everywhere you could. You publicized it on your website. Was that the first time you did that?
Yes, and I'll tell you, where this came from. First of all, the brand's called Hello, and I was serious about this notion of being friendly and trying to making sure that we were walking the walk and talking the talk. And if we're about being friendly and naturally friendly, then you can't be unreachable, and you can't be standoffish, and you can't be corporate, and you can't be cold. So as we were getting things ready, we were going to have a website, because of course you have to have a website. And I said to the folks that I was talking to at the time about building a website, and you got to go back in time. So this now is like 10 years ago. There wasn't Zoom like we're on now. FaceTime was, still, I think spotty at best. And Skype was like cutting edge. I said, well, what if you came to our website and you just got a prompt asking you to start your camera if you'd like to Skype? And people looked at me like I had 8 heads. They're like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, wouldn't it be cool if you came to our website, like I'd say hello, like it was only open from like this hour to this hour. And, if you came at midnight, well, maybe I was asleep. Like tough, so sorry, see you tomorrow. And they were like, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I said, well, I can't, like technically, or I shouldn't. And I said, well, technically, there's a way, but like, no, you shouldn't do it. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, people go to the web to glance. They want to learn things. And I said, like, what? Well, they're going to want to know about where they can buy it. And I said, well, then they'll tell me their zip code and I'll look it up and I'll tell them. I said, you can't do that. They're going to want to know about the ingredients. And I said, well, then I'll tell them what's in the ingredients. I'll tell them why we have the ingredients we have in there. Well, they're going to want to know about your animal, testing policies. I'm like, great, because we don't test on animals. So we'll have a great conversation, like whatever they want to talk about. Maybe they just want to say hello. Anyway, the compromise, because it was a compromise, because I realized I'm like, all right, it might be very limiting. I also have some other things to do. I probably can't like just sit around all day and all night. So we came up with the Skype button. And it's been there since day one of the Hello website, which was day one pretty much of Hello being live out there. And I get pinged from all over the world all the time. And unless I'm on a plane or on a podcast or in a meeting with a retailer or with my family at something, I pick up. And I've had some incredible experiences, incredible, because people are amazing. People are awesome. And I can't tell you how many times people have been shocked. It doesn't go to anyone other than to me. It comes to me.
How much of this is a marketing element and how much of this is where you learn?
It's another great question. I'm always learning. So I'm like, if anyone wants to share something about what they like or what they don't like, please, like, bring it. It really was a way to connect. And if connecting in an authentic way means it's marketing, then it's marketing. And the reason I came up with this in the beginning, by the way, when we started e-commerce stuff, we shipped ourselves. I used to write a note in every box that went out. I would look at where you lived and what you bought. And if I had any kind of thing I could come up with, I wouldn't like stalk anybody. It's like if you were writing from Rochester, New York, and I went to school in Rochester, New York, I would write something about Rochester, New York, because I had a tie to Rochester, New York. And if you bought a certain product that I loved, I would be like, oh, good choice. Like, that product is amazing. Wait till you try it. I hope you love it as much as I do. And I would always include my business card and these were handwritten notes. And each one was different. It wasn't like I had like the same thing I'd cut and paste. And people were like, you're crazy. Like, why do you do that? And I didn't think I was crazy at all. I was like, this is what sets us apart. We're not special. The people that buy this stuff, that care enough to get in touch with us or drop us a line, they're special. Whoever sent a note to their toothpaste company, their oral care company, like, that's amazing. Like, if they're happy and they want to tell us they're happy, it's like, that's amazing. Like, what can we do to, really truly connect and make it count? So again, I say this a lot, like, people have a bullshit meter and they can tell if it's cut and paste. And this idea, honestly, I think the genesis, the earliest inklings of this idea came to me a long time ago when the interwebs were new. I'm an admitted Apple fanboy from way back. I'm like an Apple IIc, like, I'm old school Apple all the way. Like, when Apple was going out of business, I was like, I better get like 2 computers because, they're going to be gone. Like, I'm really deep in Apple camp. And when the interwebs were new and people used bulletin boards and things, I, of course, followed all these wacky, Apple fandom sites, like, very closely. And I remember there were always 1 or 2 people that would post some story that they would send an email to Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs would respond, and we'd all lose our minds. Like, sometimes he'd write 1-word response. Sometimes he'd write like 10 paragraphs, and you just be like, I can't believe this guy wrote back. And this isn't when Apple was the Apple we know it. This was like, Apple was kind of in some fits and starts.
When he first invented the black turtleneck.
Like, seriously. And just the fact that Steve Jobs would write back to anybody was so cool. And it always stuck with me. And I'm not making any comparisons to Steve Jobs. I swear, I promise, there's no way.
You do like design.
Anybody can, or I could, but I love design. Absolutely. So, but that always stuck with me, the way people reacted, myself included, when he would actually write back to somebody. That always stuck with me. And I was like, that's amazing. And I've been very fortunate. I've met some really incredible heroes in my life, and they say, don't meet your heroes. It can be disappointing. I've had nothing but amazing experiences, touch wood. And one of the things I've learned is that the people that are like the most successful, many of them are the humblest, nicest, kindest, coolest people ever. And the ones that are arrogant and jerky and not reachable, they might do fine. But, the ones that really engage with other humans in a warm, meaningful way, like, that's why we're here. We're only on the planet for so long. So I don't know. I'm just sort of built like that. Again, no comparisons to some of these other people.
I'm going to bring you back to brand building a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
The 4 Ps, the 5 Ps, whichever number of Ps we're worried about.
Yeah, I have different Ps. I have different Ps.
Tell me about, so you've had, at least you've been involved in some form or fashion with at least 4 very successful startup brands. What are your Ps?
My Ps are people. I could say people 4 times. Those could be my 4 Ps. But people, purpose, provenance. I think people want to understand where things come from, right? Think about the questions you're asking me, like, well, how did you get here? Why do you think this way? Like, we all want to know that. Origin stories are really really cool because they bind us. They're archetypal. They touch on the things that we all have in common. I think that's why we tend to like these things. Yeah, those are really the biggies for me. There are probably a few more P's.
So in a very, very crowded world, there are people who have those very authentic, original stories that could connect with us, but it's hard to break through. You managed to break through. And did you do with advertising? Was it about I got on the shelf and my design stuck out? What was it?
It was a combination of things. We taste with our eyes. The first thing for me really is it's a combination. Let's just go with capital D, design. You can design everything. You could design for me isn't just form and fit and function and color choice. It's not just the superficial stuff. It's designing the whole experience. What is the thing? And we can leave thing broadly ill-defined. What does it make somebody feel? You can design that in a way that taps into the emotions that you really want to convey. It's not about manipulating. It's, I think, just sort of the opposite. It's like it's inspiring somebody. It's sparking something in somebody. So if the silhouette of your product helps do that, if the color helps do that, if what you call the thing helps do that, like I can't even stress enough how important names and naming are to me. And I jokingly say this because I have such a crappy name, Craig Dubitsky. I mean, look, I love my parents, but like really, they had to burden me with that. Anyway, I have a crappy name, but what you call the thing you're creating is really important. You didn't call and I don't mean you. I don't know the origin story, and I'd like to of GutCheck. But it's interesting that it's not the name, it's not the surname of a person, and it's not named after a city somewhere. It's a much more sort of visceral, modern vernacular bit being applied to an industry that's kind of operated the way it has for a while. So you're already changing the game just by naming GutCheck versus something else. If it were the Wengel group or whatever, it's just like it wouldn't be
like AC Nielsen, Arthur Nielsen.
With all due respect, right? Like it's just it's not the same thing. It's like, oh, are you Arthur Anderson or are you Accenture? Like it just even that, like all these things change perception very quickly and in a visceral sense. So yes, design of everything, the way all the touch points add up and communicate has always been really critical. Ask me about Method's TV commercials. There really weren't any. Tell me about Tesla's TV commercials. They don't have TV commercials.
You talked about archetypes. I pay a lot of attention. You pay more attention to what I'll refer to as digitally native brands. They seem to have a formula. I'm the founder. I had this problem. I found out that I could invent better socks, better mattress, better way to buy eyeglasses.
Yep.
You name it. Is there a formula? And is the formula authentic?
I think it was authentic of a time. Will it be that way forever? No. Personally, again, just speaking, all this is personal, right? Everything I'm saying is just personal. I feel like the model, that approach, that blueprint of we're going to go disrupt. There's a state industry and we're going to go direct and we're going to bypass everything and we're going to blow it up and we're going to raise so much money and run so fast that the big guys aren't going to be able to keep up. That's how we're going to disrupt. And we're going to build this one-on-one relationship because you're going direct to the word I never like to use, consumer. And then, we're going to have an exit, fill in the blank what that means. And I think we've seen this blueprint for quite some time now. And I think the wake-up calls are still coming. But for me, the reason I didn't do that with Hello, I launched Hello in traditional retail. And people were like, but brand X just sold for $1 gazillion. I'm like, I'm not about the exit. I'm about making the best stuff that people can fall in love with. If I were focused on the exit, I don't know. I would have stayed doing what I used to do. I used to be a derivatives trader, a base metals derivatives trader. I hated that stuff.
What motivates this? Every single time I've ever spoken to you, you're the most passionate, enthusiastic person about everyday products I think I've ever met.
Yeah. Yeah, because we as humans, we write our narrative through our things and people have shitty things. So I feel this moral imperative to do whatever I can to try to make everyday things better, everyday things that are affordable by more people that hopefully bring a little bit of a bright spot to their day, because most people live in a very narrow band. Why do we have 18 streaming services? Because life can be tough and boring and we need a little escapism. Why do we watch professional sports? To see somebody do something physically that we can't do, to harken back to when we were young and we could jump higher and wish we could jump that high, or we like the fact that they're wildly exuberant in their lifestyles. I don't know, but it's just like what we do, right? Why do we watch Kardashian? Like, people want to be entertained.
Some of us do.
Exactly. So I'm not, yes, no judgment, by the way. My point is that we live in this narrow band, right? So how do we create things? It's going to sound cheesy. I really mean it. I don't mean it to be cheesy. Like that people fall in love with, that they're like, that made my life a little better. That was awesome. And by the way, and to do that for everybody, not just for a subset, not for like, oh, well, I can shop at expensive place X, Y, or Z, so that's good for me. Like to make stuff that everyone can find some joy in, that's awesome.
So, all right, we're going to go to our first speed round. So we believe that there's a DNA to Gutsy brands. So I'm going to run through 4 different elements of the DNA of a Gutsy brand and ask you to tell me the first brand or campaign that comes to mind.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have a sip of something just to.
All right. We think the first part of the DNA of a Gutsy brand is being empathetic, truly getting people. What brand or campaign comes to mind?
One of the things that I love about Apple is that how do you make something that's so ubiquitous that everybody uses and still make it cool, still make it something that everybody wants? It takes such a deep understanding of how humans think and work and how they live with the things that they care about in their lives to be able to really do that and still give each user a sense that this thing is meant just for me and it's really personal. How do you create something really personal at scale?
So I know this is your speed round, and I'm going to interrupt.
It's our speed round.
The thing what the iPod did to begin with, the iPod allowed you to create your music list.
1,000 songs in your pocket, right? Here's another brand that I think could be interesting. Spotify. It's incredible. Like, it's pretty much every song in the world. You can download them, you can share them, you can forward them, you can do all sorts. I think that's an amazing one. Another one,
you might want to use that on the set. You might hold your brands now because I got more.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna hold my brand. Another one, totally different, totally new, totally different. Patreon. Why Patreon? Because you as a human can support other humans that you think are doing admirable, cool things, and you can engage with those people. You can actually not just send them money. You can send them notes. They write back. It's really pretty amazing.
All right, next question. Pioneering. Pioneering brand.
Yeah, there are so many. There are so many pioneering brands. I love some of the ones you mentioned because they've taken on really big things, whether it's, Warby Parker taking on eyewear, that's certainly pioneering, and opening up stores and realizing that people actually do want to physically try things on. They want to have an experience in the physical space. That's amazing. Tesla, come on, not just because of the technology, but because they mess with the entire dealer franchise system.
Right.
And building huge infrastructure and raising huge amounts of capital to do it, and having a market cap that's bigger than basically every incumbent, automotive manufacturer combined. Right. It's incredible. I mean, there's so many interesting ones, right? I mean, obviously Amazon. I mean, these are companies that were willing to take huge risks, because that's the thread between all these. That's the key.
Confidently stand. So someone had a really bold idea and stuck with it.
Well, it's one thing to be bold. It's another thing to have courage of conviction and do whatever it takes to make sure your idea morphs and moves to where it needs to ultimately win. A lot of people are bold, but it doesn't mean they're right. And if you're too bold, that's arrogance, and nobody has patience for that or need for that in their life. So I think it's about having a bold idea, but having the courage to do whatever it takes to get it to the place it needs to be or can be. Not even so much that it needs to be, that it can be. Amazon was just going to be books.
Is there a brand that stands out?
Well, Amazon originally, like I met Jeff Bezos actually in 1999. When you could go over and talk to him, he spoke at the 92nd Street Y, and I went over and had a chat with him. You could just go talk to him. And look, they started out, they were selling books, and then they did some private label e-commerce work for Toys R Us and Target, right? They were doing the white label behind the scenes e-commerce for those two companies. You think that he knew at the time that he was going to, create voice activated devices, that he was going to create, an architecture for reaching people with relevant ads online the way they do? I mean, I don't think that was part of the plan. I think it was books, and this e-commerce thing will be a thing. I mean, it's being able to pivot a little bit, or quite often, and also knowing when you screwed up, right? Anyone here have a Fire phone? Nope. Has it hurt Amazon share price? Nope. Anybody have the Tesla Roadster yet? Or the Cybertruck? Nope. Anyone know when it's coming out? Nope. No, it was promised. Saw cool pictures, saw some cool trucks and cars.
All right, I got one more for you. And you actually gave an example when you're talking about your Skype connection, but we believe that a lot of people see trade-offs and compromise, and they compromise, but the boldest of companies are those who actually seize the opportunity instead of compromising. Other than your own story of sticking with the idea that, yeah, I can be the CEO of Skypes with people. Anything that stands out as a brand that saw an opportunity, seized an opportunity when others just saw compromise?
Well, clearly there's a whole bunch, right? Some that I just named, from Amazon to Tesla to Warby Parker. Those are kind of I don't want to say obvious, but they're obvious. It's obvious that those are obvious, and it's okay. It's okay to talk about the ones that are obvious, because they're touching all of our lives. I think Zoom is really interesting because A, we're on it, but B, video conferencing, that wasn't new territory. Like,
right.
Wait, they went into video conferencing? Like, that exists.
But what about fifth or sixth to market?
By the way, anyone using Blue Jeans, like I remember when that was, oh, wow, that's going to be a cutting edge platform. And with all due respect to Blue Jeans, it may be, and I'm just ignorant, which is probably true. So I don't mean to diss on anybody's brand, but that's a really interesting example.
How did Zoom become this, I don't know, fifth to market, sixth to market, seventh? How did it become ubiquitous? What do you think?
A whole bunch of things. One, the idea that you could customize your background. They were like basically one of the, I mean, FaceTime had lots of really cool things like that too, but they didn't have this open-ended architecture like Zoom did, right? So you could be on a Mac, you could be on a PC, you could be on your phone, you could be on a tablet, whatever. It was basically open to everybody. First of all, what it was called, right, was a big deal. I can't stress enough, like names and naming are really important, really important. If anybody wants to call me and talk about names or naming, hit me up. I've been the chairman of the advisory board of this company that's named a lot of great things. I don't mean to use our time as a plug for an agency, but if anyone's interested in naming, let me know. Anyway, we can edit that out if you want, but names are really, really, really important because they create an immediacy and a shorthand to a bigger set of ideas and ideals very, very, very rapidly and very, again, boldly. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Zoom caught on, and it worked. It just worked better. I didn't have any dropped calls, so their technology was better. The video quality was better, and sound quality was better.
40-minute meeting for free. Did that help? Maybe
it definitely did not hurt. Definitely did not hurt. That's the other famous trick. It's like give it away, and then see what happens. A lot of stuff seems free on Google.
I'm going to pivot a little bit. Is brand loyalty dead? Have we moved to a world where it's so easy to experiment and try new things that there's more about affinity and preference to a consideration set?
I think people are loyal to things that they feel have empathy and that they fall in love with, right? And I think when we're inundated by messages and promises, I think the new sort of gospel isn't about how much advertising you do and how you reach me and where you reach me. It's I'm looking at complete strangers to see what they think about the product. I think reviews, I think one of the most brilliant things that Amazon offers is reviews. And we all know the number one search engine for product now is not Google. As much as I love Google, it's Amazon. And why do people go? It's not that Google doesn't offer reviews too. People trust other people. I think it's amazing and it's lovely, because I will trust a complete stranger who either wrote a scathing or a soaring review more than I'll trust the ad, because I know the ad has got a single purpose in mind, just wants to sell me something, right? They want to see me convert. They want my awareness to go up. They want me to have a recognition moment when I go to the store and I recall the ad and why it made me laugh or why it made me cry or it pulled on some emotional heartstring. When at the time of deepest consideration, when you're about to plunk down your hard-earned cash, what you really want is someone who has no agenda telling you this thing is fucking awesome or this thing sucked. That's what you really want. So I think the way that we're creating these emotional ties to brands is very different than it used to be. It's not about nostalgia. It's not about just trust anymore, because who and how we trust has been completely changed.
Right.
And I think the idea that you could just say, well, we've been around for 200 years, if you're Mercedes, sure, they could talk about, it being around for a long time, but you know what their thing is? The best or nothing. You're like, that's pretty powerful. But then they actually come through with
They deliver
cars that are pretty great, right?
They make a promise and deliver.
So that breeds, loyalty and love.
So those lessons you've learned, which contributed to the things you did, whether you were a participant or a leader, Method, EOS, Popcorn Indiana, and Hello, you're now at one of the world's largest CPG companies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an argument that CPG sucks at innovating, and therefore they need to keep buying startup disruptive brands like Hello. How are you helping a large company with big established brands like Colgate apply some of your philosophies?
I'm going to let you in on the little secret, the dirty little secret that every entrepreneur probably doesn't think about, but that they keep the secret. The dirty little secret is every startup wishes that they were a huge multinational player. And I feel like somewhere all the big multinational players wish that they were like a startup. It's this weird thing. I think it's like we always want, the grass is always greener, right?
Of course.
It's like rock stars want to be professional athletes want to be rock stars. A friend of mine created Rock and Jock for MTV a million years ago, and that was his big insight. We want what we can't have. It's incredible, right? All these celebrities now all want to be entrepreneurs. All these entrepreneurs want to be celebrities.
So with that in mind,
it's fascinating.
How are you bringing that authenticity and brand building and design to Colgate?
Yeah. So what I've shared, so a couple of things. So one was, yes, Hello, we were very fortunate. We grew and grew, and we, built this really lovely brand that people were falling in love with. And we had a lot of demand, and, the numbers were really very strong and exciting. So we were very fortunate. We had a bunch of suitors and things like that. And it's very certainly flattering and humbling. People ask me all the time, they're like, so you're a Colgate, like, why are you a Colgate? Like you had an exit. I get this all the time. Like you had an exit, you had an exit, you had an exit. I'm like, it's not an exit, it's an entrance, right? If I were just about like, oh, I just want to make things and cash out, like that's not the deal. I made sure everybody at Hello had equity. I wanted everyone to own a piece of the company and to feel like it was theirs. And I have said this at holiday meals all the time at Hello. I'd say, you're all founders. Everybody's a founder. And now, as Hello expands, I promise I'm going to get directly to the answer to your question. I tell people like, oh, Australia, UK, wherever, Hello's going to go all over the place. I tell the people that I work with, you're the founder of Hello United Kingdom. Sure, technically, yeah, I'm the founder. You know what? You're the founder. Like, go, it's ours. And I want everyone to write their chapter, make it much better. So what I've told Colgate is this is an entrance. Colgate operates in 200 plus countries around the world. I started this little brand. The idea that we can bring this brand, this proposition, this way of behaving and thinking and creating of products all over the world, that's the coolest thing ever. The fact that Colgate, no one knows this, and I didn't know this till later, Colgate's the most penetrated brand in the world. Like well over 60%. I think the number I heard was 67.7%, but it might be plus or minus
rounding.
Rounding. that number of people wake up every day with Colgate in their house, and the next nearest brand's at 40%. So I'm excited because I want to make better things that people can fall in love with and use every day. And I'm with a company that knows, how to, bring products to market all over the world and bring them into ready access and relief for people. That's a gift. That's amazing. So I'm having a lot of fun. And what I said, I'm very fortunate that I have this ability to engage with folks that are very, very senior at Colgate. I said, you have 35,000 entrepreneurs here. We just have to unleash them the right way. We have to inspire them and unleash them the right way. And we have to be able to be good listeners and take in ideas that are coming from all over and synthesize those and figure out how we prioritize the new ones so that we can use world-class R&D that they already have. They have a million people with, more degrees than a thermometer walking around that can make anything. I'm like, let's go, come up with the greatest ideas and make sure that we have the ability to share those internally with these brilliant people that we have that are lovely. Like, people at Colgate are amazing. They are amazing. So let's unleash them, and let's do it in a way that's organized and structured and impassioned, not bold to the point of breaking things, but bold to the point of we're on this mission and we're going to make amazing things happen. And they've been so warm and lovely, and you're going to see a lot of really cool new things. A lot.
It's incredible.
I'm excited. Yeah, it's going to be
So
great.
my producers, I say that lovingly, are going to challenge me to end this soon. So, and
Okay.
although I could go for another hour with you easily because you're a great guest. So I'm going to do a lightning round, one more lightning round.
Okay.
This is going to get a little bit more personal, still business. We're going to call this Spill Your Guts.
Oh, God.
All right.
Nicely done.
Business book you actually like.
Oh, boy. Okay, so listen, I am a notorious non-reader. It drives my wife crazy. My wife speaks 6 languages and has a PhD, and I'm surrounded by books. If I go to my bookshelf, hold on, I'm going to do this in real time. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you my. Okay, you can't make this up, right? Get ready. Here it is. This is one I'm totally obsessed with right now. Patents. It's incredible. It's 1,000 different design patents. I'm just randomly opening the page. Let's just like flip. What's a good one? Oh, here it is. Here's a patent from 1967 for a gas pump.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love this stuff. Like, I can't get enough of this stuff. I'm just flipping to another page. Oh, like, here's one for the stapler. Like, I want to see the technical drawings for the original patent for the swing line stapler.
I want to see how you take that book and generate your next idea. But let's keep going. Advice you receive that truly matters.
Got it. And I can't say I heed it all the time. And I'll tell you the story and I'll make it really quick. I was really young. I love music. Who doesn't love music? I'm kind of obsessed with music. I really love music. And I was trying to get a job, an internship. I was a kid. I think I was 15 at a record company. Someone I know introduced me to this guy, very senior person at a pretty young age at a big entertainment company. So I get dressed up, I put on my blazer and, rep tie and khaki pants. I'm going to go see this guy in his big corner office. And I went to see him, and I was very nervous. And this gentleman is very tall, and he's much older than I am, and I'm a kid. And I blabbered, whatever I said, just trying to get an internship. And this guy stood up, hovered over me, and told me that he graduated number 2 from Stanford, number 1 from Harvard Business School. He went on to recite this incredible list of amazing accomplishments, academic and otherwise, that he had. And he said, I'm going to tell you the most important thing I learned at Harvard Business School. Because he was like, what do you want to do? I said, I'll empty your trash. I'll pick up your dry cleaning. I'll do anything. And he said, here's the single most important thing I learned. You have to be able to tell someone exactly what you want to do. And I was floored because I had said, I'll get your dry cleaning. I'll do anything. He was like, nope. And to me, that was proxy for you have to have a vision. You have to have some kind of purpose and intent. And I didn't really figure that out till much later. Now, at this time, I was a teenager and he was probably 30 something. 15-year, 20-year difference when you're that age is pretty significant. Fast forward, every like few years, I get together with him for a holiday dinner, and I tell him the story every time. He's like, I wasn't that much of a jerk. I didn't say that. I said, you did, and it did. It had a material impact. Totally
It resonated.
changed my life. Oh, without a doubt.
You still have that rep tie?
Actually, it's funny. Everything old is new again. So I probably do. It's probably just the right width.
You haven't worn a tie in a long time.
No, I'm allergic to wool. No wool, no silk.
Taking you back to childhood, teenage years, maybe college years, brand from growing up that really created an emotional connection.
I probably have a whole bunch. So one, Panasonic had a sub brand called Technics. They made turntables. And I worked one summer soliciting shoppers at an A&P supermarket in Fort Lee, New Jersey, standing at the edge of the cashier, conveyor belt, bagging your groceries stand, where I would offer to take people's bad groceries out to their car and put them in the car for tips. And I did that because I was, however old I was, like probably 12. And I had a pamphlet in my back pocket that had this Techniques turntable that I was like going to do anything and everything I could to save enough money to get this thing. So that was a big motivator.
I got the same one, I think, in the same year. All right, next.
Amazing.
Favorite binge show?
Favorite binge show? Succession. Kind of obsessed with Succession.
Next. Do you listen to podcasts?
No. I'm a notorious non-reader, nothing I'm proud of, and a notorious non-podcaster, much to my wife's dismay. When I do listen, I just listen to music. I listen to music because it's not that there aren't amazing inspirational podcasts. Of course there are. But for me personally, I get my most crazy thoughts and dreaming state done when I'm listening to music or when I'm walking around, in nature, as cheesy as that may sound. So
perfect setup, because we are compiling a Gutsiest brand guest Spotify list.
Nice, as you should.
What is Craig's song on our Gutsiest brand Spotify list?
All right, let's see. I'm going to think of a song that I really have been listening to a lot lately, over and over and over. It's a weird song, but I love it. And I'll tell you why I love it. The song is called 1,000 Times by the singer named Hamilton Lighthouser. And he was in a band called the Walkmen. But if you hear his voice, it is not for everybody. It's not smooth as silk, but it's this love song, this unrequited love song that's so impassioned and it's incredible. And I think it's called 1,000 Times. I think I've listened to it 1,000 times. On and on and on and on. Don't ask me why, but I'm in love with it.
It's now on our playlist. Craig, you're the best. We are all about the human experience, and you're all about the human experience, and we appreciate you spending time with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. And I know I always tell people, please, if you ever want to get in touch, you should. LinkedIn, Skype, you can call me. I have a good telephone number, 917-392-1000, very easy to remember. And people ask me, like, how'd you get that number? And I'll tell you the super quick story how I got it. I went into the store. I had gotten an iPhone when it first came out, and to activate the phone, you had to set it up with a number. And I already had a phone number, but it was the only way you could get the phone to work. So I got whatever random number, and I thought, well, I'm not really going to use that. I already have my other phone number, and now I'll get to play around with the iPhone and see how it works. Because I'm a joker and I love words and wordplay. I, of course, looked at the number, looked at the telephone, and went and made a joke in the store about what my new phone number actually could spell out if you use the letters that match up with the numbers. And I won't tell you what it was because it's pretty inappropriate, but I had a good time with it. And I made them laugh so hard in the AT&T store that they said, well, let's go look for a new number for you. And this person that was helping me was like, ooh, how about this one? 917-392-1000. I was like, no, really? He's like, it's shown available. If you want it, it's going to be gone in like 3 seconds. I was like, take it. So moral of the story, like, make somebody laugh and you too could get a good phone number. So that's my phone number. So yeah, call me, write me, Skype me, text me. Let's talk brands and listening to the gut. If I had $1 for every person that told me, you can't make oral care brand, or chapstick, that's lip balm, you can't make a lip balm, or cleaning products, no one cares about cleaning products. I mean, I like, everyone's told me no to everything. So the other bit of advice that I got probably from my parents is, if you don't try, you've already failed. So why not try? So all the people that tell you no, don't listen.
Perfect way to end. Thanks so much. This has been great.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Rob, that was such a great conversation. There was so much from Craig's background, what's important to him, and all of the brands that represent Gutsiest. What do you think were your key takeaways?
Well, besides the fact that Craig is fun and has a sense of humor and has built some extraordinary brands and businesses, there are a couple of things that really resonated with me. The first one that I just can't ever lose sight of is this notion of a simple idea: make the best stuff that people can fall in love with. There's so much to building a brand, but if you make stuff people love, they're going to be loyal to your brand. A couple other things I really appreciate from Craig's perspective. We often hear about consumer goods as being low involvement, low interest kinds of things, but he actually really reverses the mental model around that and really kind of points out the idea that the consumer goods are actually the everyday things we use, that things that we use, that things we use throughout our day, throughout our lives. It might not be like an automobile purchase or a computer purchase, but these are things that we can't get through any single day without. And I love the way he elevates the idea that these are everyday things and therefore everyday things are important and we should make everyday things that people love.
That's so true. It reminds me of when somebody asks me, what's your favorite product invention? One of the things that always comes to mind for me is in the Quaker oatmeal packets, there's a fill line for your water so that you don't have to measure your water. You can put it right into the packet to measure it. And it's such a small thing, but it's clear they know their audience and it's easy to take camping. I love it. It's the smallest thing, but it impacts my life, right?
That's exactly right. And part of what I think he also said that was relevant is this notion that every single touch point matters, that your brand has to communicate and be consistent at every single touch point. And he actually talked about several brands that have been extraordinarily successful without really having advertising campaigns, as a result of noting that every touch point can be how people live and experience a brand. The other two things that stand out from what he covered, one is this notion of brands need to be authentic, that they need to build trust. He told a couple stories about the importance of authenticity and trust. And the other, just for anyone who's trying to be gutsy, for anyone who's trying to build a brand, reject those who say you can't do something.
I feel like that's a theme that we're going to hear throughout further episodes. I might be giving away a little tidbit from our next episode, but that is something that I think the boldest people, the most empathetic people, they all have in common. It's like, don't listen to the naysayers, just, follow your guts there, right?
That's exactly right.
So I think the other thing that came out of this interview with Craig was he had some really good, what I'd like to call Craigisms. The first one was take every meeting. And that reminds me of an old saying my grandpa used to say was, you're never going to know if you don't ask, right? So you're never going to know what could happen if you don't have that conversation. So that resonated with me. People, purpose, and provenance. That was interesting. That was interesting to talk about. You want to know the origin of something. It's true. It really is. I like that. What about you? Anything pop out?
I think he said it multiple times. Design and brand, and every now and then he'll throw packaging in there. And it connects, his notion of design and brand connects back to the earlier point about everyday things have to be things people fall in love with. And that's where the intersection of design and brand has been in the roots of every single new product that he's launched, from Method soap to Hello toothpaste and everything in between.
And that ties really closely to the theme that I got through the whole conversation was his Craigism, people, people, people. I mean, everything that he does is grounded in people and humans. And I love that.
And it seems so obvious when he says people, 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 but he demonstrated it in several key ways. The notion that he is a CEO of a company wanted to be able to Skype or take calls from anyone who called was authentic. And the fact that he doesn't like to use terms like consumer and audience, that he really wants us to be rooted in empathy. And
right.
as we think about the four pillars that are crucial to developing and sustaining a gutsy brand, leading with empathy, understanding people as people is the number one pillar in our mind. There are three other pillars, but that one stands out. The other three that we think are really essential, and I think Craig demonstrated in so many ways, is the notion that you need to be willing to pioneer new paths. When you do have that bold idea, you have to have the confidence to stick with it, stand behind it. And ultimately, some of the most successful brands are those who really see opportunity when others see trade-offs. And again, I think he gave us so many examples to take home from that. And I think the last thing I'd say, which connects to everything here, is building brands is all about storytelling. And part of why Craig has been such a successful entrepreneur, building 4 different companies to enormous success, is that he's a storyteller. And with our brands, we're trying to tell stories to people, but stories that resonate, that say, you get me, you understand who I am, and your brand connects with me.
Thanks for listening to the Gutsiest Brands podcast. I hope you have some key takeaways from Craig Dubitsky that you can apply to your life. I know I do. Be sure to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. Next time, GutCheck's Chief Revenue Officer Jess Gadicke chats with Karen Howland, the Managing Director of CircleUp, an investment platform powered by technology that is helping some of the coolest brands out there. See you next time.